I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with dissipation, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life. And that day will come close on you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on the watch. Be alert, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. In this passage, I think it's really interesting because it begins right off the bat with talking about what? Signs. It talks about signs of what is going to come. Signs of things that will affect the sun, the moon, and the stars. I mean, these aren't little things. These signs aren't like signs that, like you'll wake up and you'll pick up a penny and the head will be up or anything like that. I don't know why I just thought of that, but I did. But these are signs that are going to affect major things. These are signs that affect the sun. Anything that affects the sun will definitely affect us. Anything that affects the moon, affects the stars, will affect us. These signs are major things that are going to disturb our regular and normal days of life. We will not miss them. It's like going down the street and you see that fancy sign that says world's best burritos. And you don't even like burritos, but the sign is so cool that 5 minutes later you find yourself sitting in this diner eating a not so world's greatest burrito. But that sign was so amazing. These signs will get your attention. These signs will come and you will know that this is it. These won't be signs that have progressed. These won't be signs that have just that will be accumulation of many things that have been happening. But these signs will be like nothing that we have ever seen. Now this can be scary. If all we would do is focus on the beginning verses here and talk about how the world will be affected, about how the cosmos will be affected, and about how nations will just throw their hands up in the air because they won't have any idea what's happened. This can be very disturbing. But the beauty of it is that we have to go on and read the rest of this passage. Because in reading the rest of this passage, we actually find that this is a passage of hope. This is a passage that it teaches us that we are going to be doing things for God and His kingdom. What we need to understand is that in all of this, that it's going to happen in a sudden way. It says unexpectedly in the version that we just read. But it'll happen suddenly. Just like Noah and the ark. Just like Lot and Sodom. The destruction will happen and all this. And it can be scary. It can be scary. It's so scary. And maybe we're focused on this too because in 2012, I don't know, the History Channel's been doing stuff. A movie just came out. Travis is giving it 2 thumbs up. What? No? Oh. Travis saw. But anyway, but it was all this stuff. We're starting to think about this again. Nostradamus and all this stuff and all these signs and what's going to happen. But what we find here when we read the Bible, and when we focus on the Bible, we find that there's this hope that lies within these signs. Because what do we read? As we go on, it says that as these signs take place, Christ will come on a cloud. I don't know if that's just a beautiful imagery. I don't know what He'll be coming in on, but He'll be coming. Christ will be coming. But then it says redemption. Redemption will draw near. Redemption will draw near. How hopeful is that? We are people that are wanting redemption. We are people that are striving for redemption. I hope that we're not a people that are so consumed with just these first verses that all we can think of is destruction and pain. I mean, as Martin Luther wrote a sermon on this passage, and it was 450 years ago that he wrote this, and he talked about the evils and the ills of this world, and it got me really thinking of one of my favorite bands, if not my favorite band, Wilco. They had a song that came out recently, and it stated this. It states that every generation thinks it's the last, thinks it's the end of the world. It sort of makes sense. We all, even Martin Luther was thinking, maybe this is the end of the world. We have that in our heads. And maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because if Christ is coming again, we're supposed to be waiting for that. But so often we can just stop there. And that can be very gloom and doom-esque, right? But every generation. So anyway, that's something that's been going on. But what we have separate here in the Bible is we have this idea and this language of redemption drawing near. So that when we see these things begin to take place, that when we have these things that begin to happen, that redemption is going to be fulfilled. And redemption is that great thing where that takes that evil, those sins in our lives away, and it makes us new, and it makes us transformed, and makes us be able to have meaning in this life. Redemption is a beautiful thing that Christ brings to us, that God so loved the world that He sent His Son into it so that we might receive it. Redemption is so important. Recently I've been reading this, I read this book by Donald Miller. And this book is talking about just good story. And just, are we living good stories? And often in our good stories we have these pains. We have these conflicts that come up that keep us from living good stories. Because all we do is focus on the bad and focus on what we've done. And this quote, it just says this. It says, in a good story, a character wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. So in the midst of talking about the destruction and all this stuff that can happen with these signs, and then we get to this idea of redemption. In a good story, that stuff's going to happen. In a good story, we overcome it. And it's by this power of redemption that we are able to. I just wonder sometimes if I am wanting this redemption to take place. I wonder sometimes if churches today want this redemption to actually happen. Because sometimes I just don't know. I don't know if we do. I don't know if we do. I mean, every Sunday we pray. We pray that Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done. Every Sunday we pray, do not let me fall into evil. But do we mean that? Do we take hold in that? In our waiting, do we mean that? Do we mean that we want Your kingdom to come and we want this redemption, that God loved the world, that He brought redemption in this world? Do we want that to take place? Do we want the evils in our life to go away? Do we crave this idea of redemption? Do we crave this idea of redemption? Do we want the evil in our community, to end? Do we want it to end? I mean, the evils in our community like drug abuse, alcoholism, racism, and domestic violence. Do we want these things to end? Do we want God's healing hand to come in and bring a stop to this? We pray it, but do we mean it? We ask for it, but do we truly ask for it? Do we want this redemption to take place? Redemption is the saving power of God in our lives and the saving power for our world today. And that's through Jesus Christ. Redemption is the saving power of God in our lives and the saving power for our world today. Do you live in a way that is waiting for this redemption to take place? Do you live in a way that is allowing for redemption to take root in your life so that others will be able to have this redemption in theirs? And the following, and the end of this passage, I think is really good, because this really makes it makes it a challenge to us all. That in the days of these signs and what we do in waiting for these signs, it matters. It matters, because I don't believe that in waiting for these signs to take place that we're just supposed to just sit around and do nothing. I don't think that's what the call is here. As we're waiting for signs to take place that will affect the cosmos, I don't think that we're just going to sit around and wait for when Jesus comes again. I think that if that would happen, Christ would come back with tears in His eyes. He would be saying, come on, I wanted you to do something. I wanted you to do something. No way did God intend for us ever to be static in our relationship with Him. No way that God ever intended for us to be static in our relationship.